Sergeant Somers was an Army veteran of 2 tours in Iraq. He served on Task Force Lightning, an intelligence unit. He ran over 400 combat missions as a machine gunner in the turret of a Humvee, and part of his role required him to interrogate dozens of terrorist suspects. His work was deemed classified. Like many veterans, though, Daniel was haunted by the war when he returned home. He suffered from flashbacks, nightmares, depression, and additional symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder made worse by a traumatic brain injury. Daniel needed help, and he and his family asked for help. But unfortunately, the VA enrolled Sergeant Somers in group therapy sessions, which Sergeant Somers could not attend for fear of disclosing classified information. Despite repeated requests for individualized counseling or some other reasonable accommodation to allow Sergeant Somers to receive appropriate care for his PTSD, the VA delayed providing Sergeant Somers with appropriate support and care. Like many veterans, Sergeant Somers' isolation got worse when he transitioned to civilian life. He tried to provide for his family, but he was unable to work due to his disability. Sergeant Somers struggled with the VA bureaucracy. His disability appeal had been pending for over 2 years in the system without any resolution. Sergeant Somers didn't get the help that he needed in time. On June 10th of 2013, Sergeant Somers wrote a letter to his family. In this letter, he said, "I am not getting better. I am not going to get better, and I will most certainly further as time goes on." He went on in the letter to say, "I am left with basically nothing. Too trapped in a war to be at peace, too damaged to be at war, abandoned by those who would take the easy route, and a liability to those who stick it out and thus deserve better. So you see, not only am I better off dead, but the world is better without me in it. This is what brought me to my actual final mission." We lost Daniel Somers that day, and no one who returns home from serving our country should ever feel like he or she has nowhere to turn. Mr. Speaker and members, I'm committed to working on both sides of the aisle to ensure that no veteran feels trapped like Sergeant Somers did, and that all of our veterans have access to appropriate mental health care. Sergeant Somers' story is familiar to too many military families. Sergeant Somers' parents, Howard and Jean, were devastated by the loss of their son, but they bravely shared Sergeant Somers' story and created a mission of their own. Their mission is to ensure that Sergeant Somers' story brings to light America's deadliest war, the 20 veterans that we lose every day to suicide. Many of my colleagues have met with Howard and Jean. They're working with Congress and the VA to share their experiences with the VA healthcare system and find ways to improve care for veterans and their families. Our office worked closely with Howard and Jean to develop the Sergeant Daniel Somers Classified Veterans Access to Care Act. The Sergeant Somers Act ensures that veterans with classified experiences can access appropriate mental health services at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Our bill directs the Secretary of the VA to establish standards and procedures to ensure that a veteran who participated in a classified mission or who served in a sensitive unit may access mental health care in a manner that fully accommodates his or her obligation to not improperly disclose classified information. The bill also directs the Secretary to disseminate guidance to employees of the Veterans Health Administration, including mental health professionals, on such standards and procedures on how best to engage veterans during the course of mental health treatment with respect to classified information. And finally, the bill directs the Secretary to allow veterans with classified experiences to self-identify so they can quickly receive care in an appropriate setting. The Sergeant Daniel Somers Act passed the House in February, but now we're waiting for the Senate to take action. No veteran or family should go through the same tragedy that the Somers family experienced, and we owe it to our veterans to pass and sign this bill into law.